So I've been trying to make this video for a long time. This is the definitive guide to crab snaring. So there are essentially 6 things that you need to go crab snaring. One is your pole, another is your reel, another is your line. And once you have those ready, now you can get your fishing weight, you can get your snare, and you can get your bait. So those 6 things, once you have those, you're ready to go crab snaring. So the pole I recommend is at least a 10-foot. Now if you live in San Francisco, you can go to Gus's Tackle. They have a 10-foot or 11-foot Roddy Gator, that's what it's called. Another option that a lot of people get, is a good crabbing pole, is a Daiwa beef stick. Sometimes you can find them on Amazon for 25 bucks for a 10-foot one. Next off is your reel. You're gonna want at least, in my opinion, a size 6,000 reel, because when you've got this crab snare full of bait, that's at least 5 or 6 ounces. And then you got another 5-ounce weight, sometimes an 8-ounce weight. So you could potentially have a pound of weight that you're throwing out on your pole. So if you got like a little 6-foot pole and you got a little 4,000 reel, that thing's not gonna do anything. It's gonna break before you get your line out. Now your reel, size 6,000 at least. I would recommend an 8,000. Jan bought an 8,000 Penn Pursuit, and it feels like butter when you reel in those crabs, even if you get a double hookup keeper.
I'll be eyeballing my reel.
Next off is line. I recommend, all this is my recommendation, but I think you should get at least 30-pound braid. 30-pound braid, because when you cast, like I said, you're casting out almost a pound of weight. So when you really bend that pole and cast it out like that, you're putting a lot of pressure. So 30-pound minimum. Now you're gonna need a weight. Depending where you're at, I would say the minimum you should use is a 3-ounce triangle weight if your weight is on the outside of the snare, and all the way up to 8 ounce if your pole and your reel can handle 8 ounces of lead. Now, depends on the current, how much weight you use. If it's a strong current, of course you want more weight, because essentially you want the crab snare to cast out, fall into the bottom of the ocean, sit there, so the bait scent can just grow and grow and grow, and that's what's going to attract the fish. If you got your snare out in the water and the current is moving it all over the place, then you're not going to get a crab, you're not going to attract them. The only way you'll get them is if you just happen to hook a crab as the snare rolls away. I'll go into the current and the swell and all the conditions that you're going to want to look for in a second. Now the snare you should use is going to be at least a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch 16 gauge hardware cloth snare. That way 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, the holes are small enough where the bait won't come out. Now if you have a bunch of little tiny crabs, they'll pick away at it and they'll get your bait, but for the most part the big crabs, they won't be able to get in and pick off the bait. So 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch is the ideal size for a crab snare. Smaller if you can get it. You want the loops to be facing up. So, you know, there's this one brand, they sell a big black snare. It's got these mono lines on it that just hang on the ground. Usually I fish with my friend Daniel to maybe give you an idea what kind of brand that is, but I do not like that snare. It's a great cage, but the snare loops, they do not work well at all. So find a snare that's got the loops up in the air. Gus's Tackle has them. I make my own. You can make your own too. And lastly, bait. You're gonna need bait. In this order is my opinion what the best bait is. Squid, mackerel, and these next few are, you know, depends on the day. You can have chicken, you can have smelt, you can have old fish carcasses, and they all, it depends on the day, seem to work well. So there are 2 ways to cast. You can cast just overhand, boom, straight over your shoulder, straight out. I don't think you get as much distance, at least I don't. Another way, that's my favorite, I've been casting this my whole life, is just do it on your side and boom, like sidearm it, and then there, that way you can get it. So one thing about casting a heavy weight like this, when you cast it out, you don't really just want to just cast it like that. You want to let your pole kind of be like a spring. So before you cast it out, let the weight bounce one time, and then you can really cast it out like that. Let the weight bounce one time, and then you can really cast it out like that. And I've seen a lot of people, they'll try to cast sidearm, they'll let go way too early, and their snare will just go flying along down parallel to the water and just go flying past people's faces. So you do not want to do that either. If you want, you should go to like a beach where there's no one there and practice before, you know, going to another beach, or you'll embarrass yourself or you might hurt someone. All right, as far as weather and water conditions go, the very first thing that you should check is the wind. If it's like over 15 miles an hour, it's not even worth it to go. You're cast out, your line will be bowing. You know, it's gonna cause waves, it's gonna cause wind swells. So wind, check that first. Next, check out the current and the swell. And how you find out how strong the current is, you look at the low tide and you compare it to the high tide. And if there's not much of a change in between it, you know the current is going to be less because not as much water is moving from low tide to high tide. So if low tide is a 2, high tide is a 5, then it's going to move 5 feet within 6.5 hours. Not 5 feet, it's going to move 3 feet within 6.5 hours. So that's a pretty good current right there. It's pretty low. Now if it's like a -1 and it goes up to a 6, it's got to move 7 feet in 6 hours. So you want to avoid those days. There are some spots where the current isn't as strong, so if you've got a spot, you might want to keep it a secret and go there on those days. Now of course, the swell is another major factor in crab snaring. If it's a big swell, the waves are going to be crashing out far, the crabs probably aren't going to be near shore. But another important thing about the swell is if the waves come in to shore, you want them to be as low as possible, because when you're reeling in the crab snare and the crab is coming in, your crab might be near the top of the water column and it might start surfing that wave. And if it starts surfing that wave and that wave comes in faster than you can reel in, you'll put slack in your line, and what slack in your line does is it loosens the crab snare and the crab will just fall right off. So you can pick a day where the swell is low. That's a really good way to minimize the height of the waves. Another way is to go at low tide. So usually what I do is I go 2 hours before low tide and I'll fish it about 2 hours after low tide, and that way the swell and the waves minimize in height near shore. So the swell that you want to look for is like 5 feet or less. That's what usually I do when I'm looking for a day to go crab snaring. It depends on the app too. Some apps, they'll say 5 feet and the swell will actually be like 7. Some apps will be 5 feet and the swell will actually be like 3 feet. So just really, if you choose one app, stick with it, and then so you know what it is for all the different conditions. Another thing that you want to look for if you're going crab snaring for dungeness crab is that you want a sandy bottom floor. Maybe some seagrass is okay, but you don't want a lot of kelp and you don't want a lot of rocks. There's no dungeness crab near rocks. That's where rock crabs hang out. So a sandy bottom floor, some kelp is okay, and then you should have luck with crab snaring for dungeness. All right, now when you're setting your snare, say you've casted it out already, you're ready to set the hook, you're ready to bring it in. I see a lot of people, they'll just bring it in, they'll jerk it one time, they'll bring it back, and they'll reel in, and they'll jerk it again, and they'll reel it in. But what you do when you jerk it back like that, and then you bring it forward, you put slack in the line, that's gonna open the snares. So do not do that. You're gonna look like a noob. So the proper way to reel it in, one of the proper ways at least, so you ready? You're gonna point your pole tip to the horizon. And you're gonna set the hook back, and when you can't pull back anymore, then you start reeling. So you keep constant tension on the line. Your pole is constantly bent, it's not going back and forth, it's just constantly pulling.
He says hi. He's so cute.
Now if you got a real big one on there, you'll pull and the pole will be bent, you'll pull back because you can't reel because it's so heavy, and then you'll reel forward and going forward, keeping the pole bent. And when you reel forward, you can't do it anymore, you pull back, reel forward, just like you're pulling in a big fish. Same concept, you just want that tension on the line consistently. Let's say, I don't know, it's probably like 6 inches. Let's check real quick.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, easy.
All day. 6-incher.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Another one in the bucket. Get in there, fella.
Yeah, there's some big boys right there.
Golly, that thing is big.
So I got one. Oh, you little.
Was Molly gonna be alright?
Yeah, she will not get close to them. You're terrified of the crabbies.
Careful.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We got 12.
Not bad. Not bad at all.
Shoot! No, that ain't bad. Not bad. It's nice. And we got sturgeon bait, so this is like a bonus.
Mm-hmm.